Welcome, everyone, to Group 5's presentation of our game, Minesweeper. To start off today's show, I'm Jake Anderson. I'll be talking about the if and else statements. So, in our example here, we've got this generating event method, if you will. To break it down really simply, a value is going to be collected. And if that value equals a certain integer, in this case, then it will return it'll run another method. In the simplest of if and else statements, there's going to be one Boolean operator check. Is this equal this? Is this greater to this? So on and so forth. And if not, then everything else will be put into this else statement down here. If we wanted to do multiple Boolean checks, as we do in this case, in Java we've got what's called the else if statement. So if this mouse click up here, if the value that's returned to the mouse click is equal to 111, then it will run this method. Or if the mouse click is equal to this value, then it will run this method. Or if the mouse click is equal to that value, it'll run this method. Any other value that's being returned will fall under this else category and won't get run at all. Well, that's about all I want to talk about else if statements. I'll turn the time now over to Desi.
Hi guys, this is Desiree Page. I'm going to be talking about a while loop. A while loop can be used as a standalone loop, or it can be used in a do-while loop or nested in a for loop. The while loop uses a Boolean condition. So for this loop to iterate, it's going to check to see if the condition is true. Now in our while loop right here, this is always going to be true. But for this reason, you use a while loop, and if in other cases, if it doesn't run, or if it is false, it could never run. So, for example, if you have something that is x is greater than 0 and the user inputs 0, the loop could never run at all. A while loop is best used if you want the loop to run an unknown number of times. And for our while loop, we have it in our options menu class. And we have some variables up here, and down here it's going to check to see if our the user is going to type in 1, 2, or 3 for the difficulty of the board. Right here it's going to check this choice. So our string in diff equals board size int choice. If it's going to make sure that the length is just one character, at least one character long, and the choice is going to equal an integer of in diff. So that's going to be our 1, 2, or 3. So this is going to run if we have an integer. If it doesn't have an integer, if it the user types a character or just clicks enter, it's going to return this error. And then it's going to click this return and return back up to our while loop right here. Now, for this to break out of our loop, our user has to click 1, 2, or 3, and the choice is going to equal our in diff variable, and then that is when our loop is going to break. And after our loop breaks, it's going to return down here to line 48 and run the rest of our code, depending on the choice that was given, easy, medium, or hard, or 1, 2, or 3. So that's kind of a basic run of how while loops work. Lana's going to go into now about a do-while loop.
Hi, this is Lana Romrell, and here we have our do-while loop, and it takes this much for the one that we put. Ours is in our main menu, View Java, and before we start the do, we initialized a string variable and called it command. And so when the do loop begins, and first of all, the ideal time to use a do while loop is when you need the loop to run at least one time, which is ideal for a menu because you want to be able to display the menu and get user input. And so you don't want a false condition right off the bat. And so a do while loop will run at least one time before it checks to see if it is true or false. And so the first line here, we get input from the user, and it's put into the command variable. And then in our variable, we trim it. In case they had put in a lowercase, we want to convert it to uppercase so that we can just do a comparison of uppercase inputs. And so we trim off anything extra that they may have put in. And then it goes into this switch case, and I won't cover that. Rich is going to talk about that in a little bit. And then it gets down to the bottom here where it's doing the comparison. And this is where it will determine whether the loop will be repeated or not. And in this particular case, we have it so that if the variable command is not equal to x, which comes from up here, then we want it to repeat again. And then if when it breaks out of this loop, it comes as return, and we'll go back up to the top of our function. So I'll turn the time over to Megan.
Hi all, my name's Megan. And I'm going to go over the for loop. So there's a couple of main components of the for loop to take note of. So you have the declaring, initializing the control variable in the first part. It then goes on, and in this part, which is the second part, this is the checking condition, where it checks to see if if I is less than the length of the menu item in the high score view object, and if it is, it will go on to the body right here and print out this line. It then goes up and to an incrementing loop control variable, where it will increment the variable or decrement depending on your loop. But for ours, it's going to increment the I, and it will go back over into the checking condition to check to see if that I is still less than the length. And if it is still less than the length, it will go on to print the line again, and it will go up and increment the I again. But if it is more than the length, it's going to break out of the for loop and go on to this print line afterwards. So that is the for loop. Next, Caitlin is going to talk about the arrays.
Okay, so this is Caitlin Pettit. So another way you can use that for loop, and actually she kind of mentioned it, is you can use it to sort an array. And so here's an example of one of the arrays that we created. So arrays are pretty much tables that you make in the program. And so there's one-dimensional arrays, there's two-dimensional arrays, and there's actually three-dimensional arrays as well. But this is a one-dimensional array, meaning that it only uses like one row. So this is kind of like the X in like a graph, and so it just has an X row. And the way you call an array is, well, this one's an integer array, so you put int, and then here's the name of the array, and then you use these little brackets, and then you do the equal sign, and then you put all the numbers or integers that are included in this array. So this one is for our high score class, and so these are our sit-in high scores for our Minesweeper game, and we put them in an array so that we can sort them later and show which one is the highest score. So if we come down here, here's where we are sorting it, and this is called a selection sort, and this one sorts things in ascending order. So pretty much what this function does is it steps through the array and it first finds the smallest integer, so it'll find the 2 first. It'll go through the whole thing and find the 2, and it'll move the 2 into the first position here, into the 0 position, and then it'll go through again and find the next highest and bring that over, and then the next highest and bring that over to the 3rd position, next highest, bring it over. So that's how this selection sort works. It runs through the program and then brings the correct integer into the order that it is supposed to be in. So if we come down here, that's what this right here is. This is the sorting. This little part right here is what moves it into the position where it's supposed to be in. There's other kinds of sorting functions. There's like the bubble function, which like compares two things that are next to each other and swaps them in whatever order you want. There's the shelf sort. There's, let's see, there's a bunch of other ones. So you can use different sorting functions for different things, and they work differently. Some work better for bigger arrays and some work better for smaller arrays. So this one is in ascending order, but if we wanted it to be in descending order, all you would have to do is come down into, I think it's this one, and you would add a -1 there, and then it would put it into descending order instead of ascending order. So that's how that selection sort works, and that's what an array is. Now on over to Richard, who's going to talk about switch functions.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. This is Rich Bell, and as Caitlin said, I'm going to talk about the switch command. So for the switch, it works similar to the if and if-else statement. The switch has two main variables in it: switch, which calls it out, and then it's got the case, which is where it matches. So to start out, you run your switch statement, and then it's going to grab this command variable, which is what the input is. Then the way this statement works is it will then step on through each case until it finds a match. So we're matching on just a single character, or I think we have it called out as a string. So it matches on either A, B, C, G, P, or Q. So if a B, for example, was entered, it would come down, look at this, it doesn't match, it would come here, it matches on a B. So then it's going to go ahead and run the display board help function. Once it's done running that, it'll come back and it will break out of the switch statement. If we did not have the break here, it would actually just come back and continue running through the rest of these matches. The main difference between the switch and the if or if else is the switch is used when you're matching on one single object or variable, whereas the if is mainly used for multiple objects or variables. So just take a minute. I'm going to show you what we have for our game so far. If we go ahead and run the game, it gives us a welcome screen, welcome to Minesweeper, and then it brings up our GUI that we have so far, which shows us our two menus. We've got our main menu and our help menu. So if we look at our help menu, we can choose any of these inputs, and we get a pop-up like object of the game, how to play Minesweeper. If we go into main, we've got where we can run our game, we can run our stats. This one here tests the if statement that Jake talked about, and you see over here, the first time I clicked it, it says, boom, you died. The next time I click it, it tells me I clicked on the 6. Anyway, so that shows how his if statement's working. The statistics will run with our arrays. So the array had a total of, I think, 18 variables in it or integers, and it's going to sort it from lowest to highest and give us our top 10 scores in seconds. So the highest score is the low value, which is the 2, on down. It can pull out with just the average score, high score, all time, or we can run our game. So if we run our game, it's going to ask us for user input, choosing a difficulty, easy, medium, or hard, and then it's going to launch our board. Eventually it'll show up in the GUI, but for now it shows up over here. Tells us we chose an easy board, gives us the chances of hitting a bomb, and then we can do input. So we could choose row 1, column 1, and then we could go row 2, column 2. Tells us we hit a bomb and the game is over. So that's our game for now. That's Minesweeper. Got a lot more work to do, but anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.